A prison riot in South Carolina left 7 dead last month. The state's prison system ranks among the lowest funded in the nation. And according to a new report from USA Today, it's also one of the deadliest. The report says last month's riot and others could have been caused in part by budget cuts. Steve Reilly is an investigative reporter for USA Today. He joins me now from Washington. Welcome, Steve. Your piece mentions that the 2010 criminal justice reform package cut a number of things. Tell us about that.
Well, state lawmakers in 2010 enacted a criminal justice reform package that deprioritized spending on rehabilitation and other programs, and also deprioritized prison sentences for low-level offenders. The result of that was that the state saw a 14% reduction in the state's prison population from 2010 to 2016. But along with that, the state is now one of the most violent in terms of its prison system in the country.
Can you explain how exactly these budget cuts have impacted last month's prison riot, for instance, at the Lee Correctional Facility?
So what experts are singling out is the fact that South Carolina's prison system is drastically understaffed. About a quarter of the positions are open. There are about 600 open positions in the South Carolina prison system for corrections officers. And so what happened last month at Lee Correctional Institution, there was a ratio of about 1 correction officer for 35 inmates at the time. When you look at the federal system, there's about 1 corrections officer for 10 inmates. So there's a serious issue with understaffing of South Carolina's prisons, along with the reduction in programs for offenders to keep them busy and to give them counseling. And so the end result is that the prison system suffers from violence problems.
Well, the Vera Institute of Justice says South Carolina ranks 9th lowest when it comes to state spending on prisoners. Are other states near the bottom seeing a rise in prison violence?
They are. What's happening in South Carolina is part of a national trend. What we saw looking back decades ago is that there's been an increase since the 1970s in the nation's federal and state prison population. It peaked in 2009 and has been reducing since then. But alongside that has been an increase in violence. If you just look at the prison homicide rate, in 2005, it was about 4 per 100,000 inmates, about the same as the rate outside prison walls. It nearly doubled by 2014 to 7 inmates homicides per 100,000. So we're seeing a coupling of these funding cuts, which lead to violence inside prisons.
So you noted that budget legislation was aimed in part at reducing prison populations. It led to a 14% drop in the number of inmates. The bottom line question, can lawmakers legislate changes that cut budgets and at the same time reduce violence?
What experts I spoke to for this piece mentioned was that this can be done, but it can't be done overnight. And so you can't cut the prison funding level at the same level as your prison population. And so there needs to be a level of staffing in these prisons is key. That's appropriate for the level of for the population. And so the cuts that we've seen in South Carolina have been linked to this increase in violence that's emblematic of what we see nationwide.
All right, Steve Reilly in Washington. Steve, thank you.
Thank you.